Hello everyone, AmyR here from Prairie Paper and Ink with another video for the Picket Fence Studios YouTube channel. They just had their February 2025 release and it is fabulous, as always. I'll have a link to the release in the description box below the video. Totally worth checking out, there's so many goodies. I, of course, zeroed in on the large floral. There's more than one, but for now, I chose to focus on the Simple Blooming Daisies stamp set. Love it. Love it. And as the title of the stamp set implies, I also did simple watercoloring using some of the Picket Fence Paper Splatter watercolors. These have some shimmer in them, so I will show that at the very end of the video. So very simple watercoloring, multiple splatters, very simple ink blending over a stencil, more splatter, all the things. As always, everything I used will be listed and linked in the description box below the video. You can check that out if you're interested. That's enough chatter from me. Let's get into making these cards. So the Simple Blooming Daisies, like I said, it's a large floral. The stamp of just the daisies itself is about 6 inches tall, just to give you an idea. Because this piece of Canson watercolor paper that I'm going to stamp it on is roughly like 6 by 4.5 inches. So a good size. Not ginormous, but you guys know I love me some large florals. And this one, love it. So, like I said, Canson XL watercolor paper. And I've got it in my stamp wheel here. And then I'm inking up the image with VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And this time I'm not heat embossing it. Most of the time I heat emboss when I stamp with this and I'm going to watercolor because I like the raised edges of the heat embossing. Because I talk about this, it provides like bumper pads. So I don't have to worry about, things running into each other, all of that. But this time I decided to be a little bit more adventurous and not heat emboss. Just stamp and then watercolor. But also the watercoloring is going to be very, very simple. Images like this tend to intimidate people. And I get it. It looks very detailed. It looks difficult. Honestly, these are the easiest images to watercolor versus images that are just an outline, just outlines of everything, no detail. Those are actually more difficult because then all you see is your coloring, because there's no other line art, there's no other like shading in the actual image. So I honestly find images like this the easiest because it kind of hides the coloring in a lot of ways because there's just all that detail. Like look at all the line detail on the petals, all the detail on all the flower centers. It hides things. So it just makes it simple. So that first little bit, that was real time. Now I've like super sped this up. This did not take very long. I did 2 of these and all I was doing, I put the paper splatter watercolor, just, a few drops of it onto my palette. You don't need much. And also I'm just using a little water brush. If you want more control, a paintbrush and water always helps. This, again, these were all small areas. Like I just went, one petal at a time, but all small areas. So my little water brush just did the trick. And the other thing you need to remember if you're looking at using the paper splatter watercolors, if they've got the shimmer in them, you do need to shake them up, shake them up real good before you put them on your palette, and then you're good to go. So the first one I'd used Liquid Yellow Sunshine for the flowers, and then this one I'm using the Liquid Candy Cane Red. I don't do red very much. It's just not a color I lean for. I like it as accents, little red hearts, little this, little that. But this is a really pretty red. And of course my camera doesn't do justice, but in real life it is. I was really happy with this. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I've had this sitting for the last couple months and I haven't used it. I love it. And these red flowers, I don't know why, they just made me happy. They're just happy little flowers. So that was just the fun of it too, is just to do different color combos. And again, if I'd had more time in the day, I would have used other colors. Like the Picket Fence released like a blue shade this month. Oh, these would look so pretty. And then there's purples, there's oranges. Like I could have done a rainbow. Again, when someone figures out how to give me more hours in a day, I think life will be great. Anyway, for the flower centers, I used liquid Pecan Tart Brown, which it's like a delicious color. And then for all the greenery, I used liquid Holly Leaf Green. And at the end of the video, when the cards are done, I will tilt these in the light so you can actually see the shimmer. Because like I said, it's very subtle. Even when working with them, it's subtle. But then when the light hits it, it's like, oh, it's a little unexpected. It's quite pretty. So once I was done painting these, I let them dry, which didn't take long because I didn't use a lot of water and it was just simple. And then I used the coordinating wafer die to die cut both of these panels. And I like that it cuts out all the little like innards, all the little inside bits. That always just makes me happy. So die cut those, popped out all the little center bits. And then I got to work on my backgrounds for the card fronts. And for that, I've got some A2 pieces of just smooth white cardstock. These are 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch pieces of cardstock. Stuck them to my paper inking palette. And I'm using the classic Hatch 6x8 stencil. And some of my Picket Fence life-changing blender brushes, which are filthy. I don't clean them. And I don't really care. And I made myself get over this because that first yellow I used, my brush still had green on it. So, and I was like, oh, but I went with it and I was okay with it. I survived. We can survive this. Anyway, I'm using Altenew fresh dye inks to do my ink blending. And on this first panel, I was using Citrus Burst and Maple Yellow for my yellows. And then this is Dewdrops ink. And kind of like, again, just blending them into each other. These backgrounds are going to kind of look a little bit like a hot mess, but it all comes together. There is a method to the madness. So there's dewdrops, and then finally I add in a little bit of grass field ink and I used like one brush for the yellows, one for the aqua color, and then one for the greens. But again, like I said, I don't really clean my brushes, and it just works. It just works. Just trust the process. So see, it's starting to come together, but we're not done. We'll come back to this background. So for the second one, I'm going to use some reds, and reds you got to be a little more careful within reason for this background regardless, because I had a plan, I had a method to go in. But when you're using things like red shades and you want to add things like greens, red and greens are complementary colors. Like they're opposite each other, and they will, if you blend them together, they will create mud. Now I'm totally okay if that's going to happen, because mud color, aka brown, is fine because I've got browns already with the flower centers, things like that. But it's just something to keep in mind depending on the look you're aiming for. So for my reds, I used Rouge and Crimson fresh dye inks. And then I'm using that same Dewdrops color, so just a nice light aqua. Just blending that on, letting it do its thing. And then I'm going into Grassfield. And this is where, because again, green and red can make mud, but I'm fine if it makes a little bit of it. I'm also using a pretty light hand here. I'm not just like slapping on like a full concentration of red ink and then a full concentration of green ink. I'm just letting them kind of do their thing and just keeping a light touch. And these inks do smooth as they dry. So again, it'll all come together. So first off, we're gonna add splatter to just the backgrounds. So the first one I did, I'm gonna add that same liquid yellow sunshine, put a little bit out of my palette, and I'm gonna splatter that with my fan brush onto this background. Not a ton, but it's just there. And again, it doesn't really show up on camera, but in real life, you can see it. It's pretty. So I splattered that on that background. And then, of course, on the other background, I'm going to use that liquid Candy Cane red, which, again, splattering with red can get interesting at times. I have been accused of, like, making crime scenes when I use red splatter, but it's like, it's fun. I don't care. But again, it's all just part of the madness. So I splattered that onto these backgrounds. I let all of that dry. And then I decided to trim these down just a little bit. So I took like, not like 1/8 of an inch off, something like that. So these end up being like 4 by 5 1/4 inches roughly. So just trim these down with my paper trimmer so that the card base will frame this out a little bit. And then to adhere the daisy clusters, I pop these up with just thin foam squares. So it'll just give them a little bit of dimension, but not a whole lot of bulk. So I put the foam squares on the back of these, and then I adhered them to their backgrounds and purposely kind of offset it a little bit. So it's going to hang off the edge, and it'll hang off the edge of the card a little bit as well. And I'll trim that off when the time comes to put these onto the finished card base. But for now, I just wanted to get these adhered to these card fronts so that I can add, but wait, there's more, splatter. Are we shocked? I don't know. I wasn't. And if you are, well, welcome. I like splatter. I like doing multiple kinds. I don't know. It's a weird addiction. I can't help myself, and it's fun. So for this splatter, I started with the paper splatter opaque white. I didn't shake mine up very well. These do also need to be shaken up because just the pigments in them, these aren't shimmery. The opaque white, and then I'm going to use the opaque black, are not shimmery. I'm actually kind of glad. They're perfect accents. I love it. So I didn't shake up my opaque white very much, but was kind of the point. It's subtle. And then I splattered that on both the backgrounds. And then I'm using the opaque black. And I'm a little bit lighter of a hand with this. I didn't want to go like hardcore and just end up making it look like, I don't know, a swarm of bugs or something. So just a bit. It just adds more texture. If you don't like splatter, totally skip these steps. Don't need to do it. But I highly encourage you to try it out. It's fun. It makes an absolute mess. And I don't know why. Once you start once you get used to having splatter on absolutely everything, it's fine. So I splattered the card fronts, let them dry. While they were drying, I white heat embossed this sentiment. It's from the Simple Blooming Daisies. There's a whole bunch of sentiments in the set. And I just heat embossed the Happy Birthday sentiment with white embossing powder onto some black cardstock. And then I used the coordinating wafer die to die cut them out. And then I just popped them up with foam squares onto these card fronts, just like so. And then a bit of craft tacky glue just to even everything out. So did that to both of the card fronts, got those sentiments adhered. And then for my card bases are top folding A2 white note cards, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I'm putting them into my stamp wheel, so I've got the inside of my card. And I put a little bit of Post-it tape right at the score line so that I don't stamp past the score line, because like I said, this stamp is roughly about 6 inches and the inside of my card's 5.5. So put the score tape there to protect where the score line is. And then I lined up that Simple Bloomin' Daisy along the side. And I'm going to ink this up with the lightest shades of ink. So for this card, I'm using the Citrus Burst ink. So inking that up, I'm going to stamp that on the inside of the card. Then I'm going to clean off the stamp. I'm going to put the other card base into the stamp wheel. And again, reuse that Post-it tape. I reuse my Post-it tape. I keep it stuck to the top of my die cut machine. And I reuse it until it's either too saturated with ink or too dusty or what. It just doesn't work anymore. But yeah, waste not, want not. So for the second card base, I use the Rouge ink. And yeah, it just gives that pattern. And they say, obviously the Rouge shows up much better on camera. In real life, the yellow looks fine. My photos of it, there's something about yellow. Trying to take photos of it, it goes neon. It's not neon. Just FYI. But anyway, stamp the daisies. And then I took another sentiment from the set, lined that up, and then I'm inking it up with that VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, stamping that, and then I'll stick the other card base back into the stamp wheel, and I'll stamp that same sentiment, and that'll finish off the insides of the cards. So they'll have the daisies and the sentiment, and another you could do if you needed to do like a batch of clean and simple cards. Stamp that daisy stamp in different colors, like do a rainbow of them, and you could do a whole card set to give as a gift. Like I said, you guys, I need more hours in a day. Just too many ideas, not enough time. So on the outsides of the cards, I adhered the card fronts with craft tacky glue, and then I just flipped it over and trimmed off all the bits that are hanging off the edge of the cards. Once I've got those adhered and trimmed off, I'm going to add my embellishments, which this is the Picket Fence in Wonderland gem mix. So all the pretty little rhinestones, because there's red ones and yellow ones and a whole bunch of different sizes in this pack. So I just adhered a bunch, honestly, because especially when they're little, and I just tuck them in and amongst all the little flowers, just some little gems, just for a little extra sparkle. So little dabs of glue, and then just picked them up with an embellishment wand and pressed them into place. So red ones for the red daisies, yellow ones for the yellow, And that's it. I just had to let the glue dry and these cards are complete. So I'm going to turn my flashlight on so that you guys can see the shimmer of this watercolor. It's, like I said, it's subtle, but then when you see it, it's like, ooh, see? It's so fine, you know? But it's there. I like the shimmer. It just makes me happy. So, shimmery, splattery, blingy, happy birthday cards. They're fun. So, like I mentioned in the intro, links to all the things are going to be in the description box below. See right here on my camera, that yellow on the inside looks fine. But the photos, just all bets are off. I love yellow. Like, that's another color I really enjoy it. It's just not fun to film with, and it's not fun to take photos of, because yellow just likes to be fugitive in its own way. So, anywho, those were the cards. Like I was just saying, links to everything are in the description box below the video, so you can just expand that if you are interested. As always, thank you all so much for hanging out with me. Thumbs upping and commenting really helps a ton, and I very much appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't, we'd love to have you. And I will talk to you all very soon in another video. Bye!